Fair enough. We are recording. Hi, everyone. I am Jen Danielson, of course, and this is another uh, episode, we'll call it, or session of the Connect Your Dots. And we're video, we're audio. So I love last week when Tara was on, she called it podcast adjacent. So we're a quasi podcast. I'm not quite sure how that works. I don't know even if a podcast is supposed to have that fancy intro music, which I clearly don't. We'll figure that out later. Today, though, we are here with Erica Cosminsky and her cat sometimes wandering back and forth in there too. And we're going to talk about connecting things, how she connects things in her world. And her world is an amazing space of energy. And I apologize. I know I mispronounced this depending on who you talk to. Is it feng shui or feng shui? Or how do you
It's
how do
usually
you
the way it is pronounced. But with my southern accent, maybe you can replicate it, maybe not.
So tell folks a little bit more about what you do and how you work with this stuff.
I have been training in Feng Shui and Chinese medicine for over 5 years. And it's been, Feng Shui has always been kind of a lifelong interest of mine. It was sort of, my mom started a real interest in it in the 90s. And so I got to know some about it. And the more I learned about it, the more intricate it became. And for me, I'm definitely a lifelong student, and it was that as soon as I started actually digging into what I knew about it, I realized that I barely knew anything at all, and most of what I knew was actually kind of, I don't want to say wrong, but it was kind of misinterpreted. And so I've done a lot of work. I've got over 1,000 hours of training in Feng Shui. I am a certified Feng Shui practitioner from both one of the Feng Shui schools, and I'm a red ribbon certified Feng Shui practitioner with the International Feng Shui Guild. But how I pull it all together, I guess, is that originally I grew up with a love of the outdoors. I grew up on a working farm. My step-granddad was our county soil conservation agent, and I got into soil judging and FFA in high school. And I really wanted to work with the ecological systems of the earth. And I went to Auburn University. I have an associate's degree in agronomy and soils. And about that time, I found out two things. I found out that I have a disorder I believe it's called EIPA. And basically, I'm allergic to the sun.
Oh, no. Oh. That doesn't work as well then.
Right. I can't be outside for very long at all. I either have to wear like big broad brimmed hats, and I have a lot of allergies. I can't use sunscreen because I'm allergic to zinc, so I get blisters from the sunscreen. So it was a lot of issues going along. It's like I didn't burn and I don't tan. I blister like almost instantly. And the other thing I found out was that our intention had always been for me to go to Auburn, get my degree, and then my granddad to start training me to replace him with the state. My granddad decided he wasn't going to retire. So at that point, I was at a point where I was like, well, what am I going to do? I also at the time was engaged, and my engagement was going south. So I really hit like a turning point where I had to make some decisions. So I decided to come home and kind of reevaluate my situation. And 2 days later, after I made this decision, I was hit by a drunk driver and shattered my left knee. So it really set my life on a way different course. Through that situation, I met my daughter's father, and I kind of went on a different career path. I started working for a pharmacy as an HR manager, and I have a degree. My bachelor's degree is in organizational leadership focused in human resources. And I also have a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology focused in workplace efficiency. What I think is really interesting and why I really love what I do is that I combined all of those things every project that I'm doing, because I find that workplace efficiency and household efficiency is not so different. Because my master's degree is in psychology, I am allowed to do therapy with like hoarding situations. So I work on a grand scale with Feng Shui, and that is the thing I think a lot of people don't realize with Feng Shui. It's not just taking a cup of rocks and putting them somewhere. It works on all scales within a household. You work with the flow, which in turn is the efficiency. You work on your, your chore charts and everything. You keep your house on a schedule. And I work on, on an exterior. Feng Shui encompasses the entire soul in the landscape of the, of all of the surroundings of a home. It works on every level. So having my plant and crop and my soil knowledge, I do a lot of landscape design, believe it or not. So if I work on full scales on the exterior of the house, the interiors, and the landscape as well, and I work, like I said, from every aspect, from hoarding people to, all the way back to just your average like spring cleaning checklist kind of things. So Feng Shui has a really, really wide range of concepts and tasks. And I mean, it even does get way over into the more esoteric side of it, where I do pull birth charts for people. We talk about their core directions and their good directions and their, their not as good directions and that kind of thing. So it does have a really, really wide range.
Wow, the scale of what you're talking about there, you're right, is far more than I ever realized, that the application of Feng Shui and bringing in that organizational, the exterior sense is phenomenal. So do you take that connection? My first thought is going back to the HR and the OD, organizational development piece as well. Do you bring that? Do you focus on that with folks within their homes, or have you ever brought that to a corporate level, or does that apply to a corporate level even?
I think for me, it has taught me a lot about the way people work together. And I work with people on so many scales that I work, from, we do corporate interior design, we do household interior design and businesses and that type of thing too. So on some scales, it comes together because I may be working on an office one week, or like I've been designing an art gallery for almost a year now. And so working on an HR level of the training that I have, I work on an exterior and interior. So it's, worrying about clientele coming in, or like situations where, like mine, where I may have clients coming to my house. HR kind of plays its own role in a lot of the stuff that I work with. And I think the HR part probably doesn't play quite as much of an aspect as like the therapy training that I've had as well. I mean, sometimes I feel like I had a consult earlier this week, and her husband was a therapist, and I was like, well, this is probably going to sound like something your husband says, because I'm going to ask you, how do you feel about that? And so it's taking in, and that's the one thing I think I've really learned about Feng Shui, is it's not taking a grid of colors and making your entire living room, just, washing it with purple. It has so much less to do with that, and so much more to do with how you feel in your home. Because if you feel like your home is based on a children's coloring book kind of thing, this is the purple page, that it makes things unlivable. And I think, that's kind of one of the things that Feng Shui has been Hollywoodized as, is this color wheel of stuff, and it's really so much more beyond that.
Yeah. So how is it then? Would it be fair of me to say then that it becomes much more individualized and more personalized? I'm assuming, again, this is my understanding of it. There are elements that are going to be common that apply across the board, but is there then, I'm almost hearing, an individualized aspect to this? It's about how it makes an individual feel.
There is.
Would that be fair?
There's three different things that I would say about that. There are the 5 elements, and we want those to be as balanced as possible. And how it works is it plays, on a multitude of levels. And what I find is that sometimes you'll self-correct. But what I found when I moved in here, I had one of my colleagues do a Feng Shui consult on my house, because even with myself, it becomes very difficult for me to see those things that I walk past every day. And she was talking about how the walls here, the place where I lived before, we painted all the walls. And then what we were renting. So then we moved out and we had to repaint everything. And it was the biggest nightmare. We had chosen what there was like a hunter green that we had painted some of the walls. It was nearly impossible to get it covered. And I said when I moved in here that I was never going to paint a rental again. And so all of our walls, you probably can't even tell, like behind me, is that the trim is white, but the walls are like a buttery yellow color. They're yellow.
Okay.
They're not tan, but they're buttery. And so the walls were this yellow color. All of my frames were brown. They were all square. All the tables were square. And she was like going through and trying to count on like one hand the number of items that she saw that weren't wood items. Because it was like earth and wood. And so we started looking at kind of expanding out and like breaking out of that monotone, even in my own house. And people will have a tendency to do that they'll want all their furniture the same color, or, you know, they'll end up with a living room full of sofas that are all the same color unintentionally. So we want to balance kind of even, and sometimes some of the stronger colors like the oranges and the reds, they're such a pop that you really don't need as much of those as you do some of the others. So when you're looking at those things, is like you want to look around and see what your house is entirely covered in, like mine was, and then the other, you know, where you're lacking some of that little, you know, if you either, some people will overdo the reds and oranges, and then you'll need some blacks or some, you know, things to to fold in. But the other side of it is that if you're having issues within your life, you may hear the joke, like, you know, you see something and you see a luminescent orange shirt, and you make the joke of, I don't know how anybody would sleep with that in their house. It kind of plays over into especially the bedrooms, because we really want to watch people's rest and how they're recharging themselves, especially as busy and as chaotic as our world is. So you want to take a look at the bedrooms and see what is in here that's keeping people awake. Is there something that's making too much noise? Is it too quiet? And you want to look on all levels, not just what you're decorated with, your sound quality, your air quality, and making sure that those places are conducive to sleep. And a lot of times you will want to keep your bedroom a little bit more muted, like the blues and dark blacks and that kind of thing, as far as and whatever makes you comfortable as far as that. But the other, as far as real world, the other thing that we pull when we do our birth charts is that aligns the bakwa to each person. So it talks about how
there's the individual,
like which direction the head of your bed should face. And then, you know, and sometimes you'll be like, I have a client, we were working to help her daughter with some situations she had been in, and we realized that her bed the head of her bed was in the absolute worst direction it could have been in. And so we started solutions, and the way the house was designed, there was literally no other way they could put the bed in the room. So that's when we started cures. You know, there are cures for almost everything. And so we start looking for trying to correct things like that if you can't change the bed. The other thing that kind of complicates things is, say, like with me and my partner, David, one of our directions that our bed happened to already, my bed when he moved in happened to already face, was two of our strongest directions. And so that was simple. But if you have two people that have diametrically opposite, you know, charts within the system, you know, you have to work on how to correct things like that to bring out the best in both partners. You know, and so that always makes things interesting as well. And normally when I do Feng Shui consults, I do those charts for every member of the family, because even with the children, they will have, you know, they'll have things from their chart that will apply, you know, beyond that.
Yeah, and bringing it back to that whole system. And if you're looking at the house and all the connections that are coming in there across, you're right, back to that big picture, that big system.
Right.
When you were speaking before, I was starting to get, when you're making these connections for people, is that something you help them connect to first to create the change, or is that, or it may depend on the person? Do you see a difference between connecting that person to the idea first to make the change, or is it a different perspective to make the change first and have them see the impact?
Well, that's
How does that play for
It
you?
So I think it depends primarily on the person. If you're dealing
Right.
with someone that is very, very highly skeptical, or who has psychological issues that need to, that need to process through that, sometimes you have, and this kind of comes more from my hoarding experience, that or
Yeah.
my hoarding therapy experience. I'm not a hoarder. I'm actually the exact opposite. But you have to process through some of those things with them. And so you have to show them
Mm-hmm.
on a small scale that this is going to work. And with skeptics, sometimes you have to show them on a larger scale. But normally with that situation, you'll have one partner that really believes in it, and one partner that's really skeptical. And it'll be,
Right.
you can make moderate changes with one partner and let the other partner see that it's going to work, or see that it's helpful, and then you can kind of move forward from there. With like our hoarding therapy, a lot of times you work with them on small scales, and so if they can get rid of 5 items per, or they can realize they don't need dirty washcloths. If you pick an item, work
Yeah.
through that single item. It actually bothers me. My mom got my granddad addicted to the show hoarders, and part of it was she was trying to
Mm.
psychologically help him process through the fact that he is an extreme hoarder. And I really think that's probably why I ended up in college for a psychology degree. Um, so we started watching it. She was like, "Oh," she's like, "I don't understand it takes you so long to do these hoarding cases." And I was like, "Because this stuff you're seeing on TV is the exact wrong way to work with these people. You don't go in with them and
Mm.
throw away everything they own, because they're just gonna, go back to what they were doing before. They're gonna replace all that. They have to process through the emotion." And the underlying
Mm.
reasons about why they feel like they have to hold on to everything in their lives. And a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
those kind of situations, and sometimes it does have to happen. Say if children are endangered and they want to keep their children, then they have to do it that quickly. But those
Yep.
situations can be more psychologically damaging than just leaving things the way they were.
Yep. Too much of a huge impact all at once
Any kind of
to
situation, even
sustain.
you and I, if we try to make that drastic of an alteration in our lives,
Oh,
we would
yeah.
also have that same issue. And that's a lot of times, like when we do energy work on people, we don't just throw them into a 6 month long program and do it in one session, because you would literally break
Exactly.
the person. So sometimes
Yep.
that's why things don't move as fast as people want to, because they are not psychologically ready for that much change that quickly. It's like lottery winners. Lottery
Mm-hmm.
winners that they get $1 million and it's spent within 6 months, because they can't
I
have
know.
that amount of change, and so they
Yep.
change their spending habits.
That, yeah, no pun intended, that amount of change. But no, that's true. You can't, it's such a shock, such an unrealistic, it's such a change in reality that, yeah, to deal with it is almost incomprehensible at that level, I think. Um, so that sounds like amazing work. And I'm wondering, you talked briefly about the energy work in there, and I'm just curious if how that connects in for you into the work that you do, and how and where you choose to bring that into your space as well.
Well, I mean, one thing I find with the International Feng Shui Guild is that it we're all trained slightly differently. There's, I mean, this is an art
Okay.
that's been, progressively evolving over 5,000 years. And a lot of times what you'll see is with the
Mm-hmm.
different schools of Feng Shui, there's slight differences. And there's no right or wrong way to do anything. It's usually just a matter of consistency. And what
Okay.
so there's like the primary one that Americans know about the difference of is the difference between what they call traditional or compass school feng shui and what they call black hat or or the modern feng shui. And I am a traditional feng shui practitioner, so I work with the compass because the directions are important to the way that I operate with feng shui. There's nothing wrong with the black hat feng shui. It's just something, a matter of being consistent with it. And what I've found is through those differences is that I am a trained space healer or space clearer. And so there are people that in the feng shui that have done it for decades that don't do space clearing. And it's a difference. I mean, it's an added skill, I guess is what you'd say. It's like architects that don't work on commercial buildings or whatnot. So it's just a different skill. Yeah. And working with space clearing is literally, rearranging the energy or allowing things to release so that things can operate more effectively. And when we do that, we also, the spaces, things, items are very, very easy to clear normally because they don't have any emotional attachment to what's going on. Now, houses on a larger scale, sometimes there will be trauma or there'll be larger issues that have to be cleared. And so it's not like a simple process. And it takes a long time because it's a large area. But what we have to do then is once the house has released, we also have to do an energy clearing on every person that lives there to adjust their energy gently to the house. Because that is the detrimental thing. I had a situation where someone else had done a space clearing and then they never did the energy clearings on the inhabitants, and things kind of went, a little sideways because the people weren't there yet to where the house had become, and so it became a bigger situation there. So with me, energy work and the energy healing would go hand in hand with feng shui because of the way I work. But I have colleagues that don't do any energy work. It's there is an intuitive level to feng shui. You kind of have to feel your way through the house. But I know people that can only do it in person. They can't remotely look at pictures and connect with the energy of the house. I know people that do feng shui that don't actually consciously work on that level. They simply know things when they look at things and that kind of thing. So they work through the flow of the house, and they work on a very, very realistic, real world level. So I think it really depends on the practitioner that you're working with.
Very cool. That's bringing a whole different level of connection. And I'm going to talk through a little bit of echo here and see if it disappears again like it did before. There we go. I think it's settling. I love the idea of, I love that added clearing or working with the inhabitants' energy as well as the space energy and that connection. Just sort of identifying that connection that we have not only in our own energy, and how we always talk about how a person's energy affects the other people around you, but the energy of the space that you're in, also just the space affecting you and you having an impact on that space, I think is really something we don't keep in mind nearly enough. And if those are, you're right, if those are out of sync, that's not gonna line up well. I love that.
Well, and also we'll have different spiritual and energetic levels than the people that may have lived in our house before us. I worked with a client, I think it was last year, where they were having issues where the police and bill collectors and not bounty hunters, I'm thinking like the people that serve warrants and stuff, kept showing up at their house. Yeah. And she's like, this is crazy. We've lived here for 8 years. But the person that had lived there before them, apparently he wasn't a very nice person. And so we did a full space clearing on her house. It was a beautiful house. Trying to disconnect his energy from her house so that he, that wasn't continuing. And at first she didn't think it had worked. And it was and then after 2 or 3 weeks, she called me and she's like, at first I didn't really believe it was going to work. But she's like, the bounty hunters, for lack of a better word, they stopped showing up. And so we kind of watched, we've been having a lot of fertility issues. And so all of a sudden, we get almost done with our program that we were working through. and she was pregnant. Like all of a sudden they'd like stop trying, and that's like the key. You stop trying to get pregnant, right?
But you stop trying, yeah.
So it was like through the
Yeah.
process though, and I talked to her quite often, and they've been having so much less issue with that kind of thing, over the course of living there now, and they've been there a year or a year or two longer now. So I mean that's sometimes too is you have to rebalance the energy of your home away from whoever lived there before. It's definitely it would be like as esoteric as I am about me moving in with some Mennonites or something like that I would get along with Mennonites, but it would be different, or actually I guess it would probably be different the other way around, like if they were to have moved into my house. Kind of thing. It was like the energy just wouldn't be as simple to jive as you would, as you would think. So.
Yeah. So I want to sort of take that same idea just for a sec, but sort of shift it back to your space and your how you interact in your own house, in your own world. I know we were talking earlier, and you just, of course, as I'm about to ask this, go to audio only for a second. But when you come back on video, you've got that one picture behind you on the wall that we were talking about before we got started. And so what kind of connections do you make for yourself? What do you notice, even having all this background that you've got and all these things that you're bringing together to work with for other people? What kind of connections do you notice for yourself and your partner and your family and your home as you're going through your day-to-day? What kind of things are present in your mind? Because I always find that fascinating too, because people have this knowledge that they just work with and don't even necessarily, it gets to a point where it becomes second nature. So how does that play? How does that show up in your day-to-day?
I think the thing that I have learned, especially here recently, is that when I don't have that just simplicity in my lifestyle or my day, that I beat myself up over it really badly. And I know other Feng Shui practitioners and interior designers that do this, that they're out of town for a week and they come home and their pet sitters messed up the entire house or whatnot, that they beat themselves up over not having this perfect ideal lifestyle. And I'll tell you, it's like when we do like photos for like magazine spreads and stuff, it's like, there's a joke that talks about how Instagram, like it crops out part of the picture and that's the part that's on Instagram, and then you see the rest of the scene. And I did this video a couple months ago where, I have this immaculate setting behind me, and then I literally took the camera and rotated it around so that they could see the disaster that had been created to create this one like 3-foot wide section that looked just amazing. And that's a lot of like photo spreads for magazines and stuff. You would, if you were to look at it in real life, you'd be like, what in the world are you doing? But the way the camera works, you almost have to take like an entire room of furniture and cram it into like a 5-foot square, and then you get the angles they need, and then you put the furniture where it actually belongs. That was really weird. I'm sorry. So it's kind of, a lot of times you'll see those things and you think that your Feng Shui practitioner has this great handle on life. Well, and I'm actually about to put a video out about this where I had taken a contract job earlier this year, and sometimes this was a different kind of contract job, but sometimes when I do renovations and stuff, I'll be gone from my house 3 days, weeks on end. And the other side of this was that David, my partner, moved in with us right before I took this contract job, and I was working 12 hours. Okay. He worked third shift. So we were literally seeing each other for like 2 hours a day. And I was coming home and being like, what in the world has happened in this house? Because nothing was done. I mean, he had just moved in. He didn't know what, our process and everything was. We were having dinner, and then I was exhausted and going to bed. And, it was kind of crazy. And so the one, I actually took pictures of this for the video, was that my office area had become, like, everything that was important had been put on my desk. But what had happened was that my desk was stacked up like crazy high. because I was trying to
Yeah.
keep the rest of the house basically functional. And I think that that's where a
Hmm.
lot of people, and I find that with a lot of the people that are coming in to me as new clients, that they don't have the structure to keep their house from just becoming a nightmare. Or, they're in situations where, like my sister, she has 3 small children, and her husband travels for work.
Hmm.
He's literally home like 5 weeks a year. And she's literally running a 4-person household by herself. And people have a
Yeah.
tendency to, beat themselves up over it. And that is a bad place to get in, because that negative energy just kind of breeds and breeds and breeds. And so that's where I like to start with clients that are in that same situation, are starting with the structure of the why behind why things kind of get out of hand, and
Hmm.
combining things together. You have to find a way to work, to get even working from home. I still have trouble keeping up with the housework because I get busy.
Yeah.
I don't have, but
Yeah.
I still get busy. Um,
It's still
so,
working. You're working. It doesn't matter where you
right,
are. It's still, yeah.
right, life.
Oh, no, I know. I'm sorry. I was laughing as you were talking about that because we've got the one room that's the same thing. It's like, oh my God, somebody's coming over. Shove everything into the one room and close the door. And every now and then you go and you kind of pick away at it and it gets a little bit tidier. And then somebody else is coming over. Shove everything in there again and close the door quick.
Yeah,
And some weeks there's 2 rooms like that. It really, it's a
right.
thing. It's a
It's
thing. And
always
to
funny
get on
to
top
me
of
when I
it.
do feng shui consults that I'll start to like put the compass on the house. And then I'll start
Yeah.
to talk to them about where they're having issues or why they've scheduled, this consult or they're clearing or whatnot. And they'll say that like their children can't stay in school, or something crazy like that. And then we'll find that their clutter room, where literally everything is just shoved and hoarded away, is in their knowledge sector. Or they keep having, I had
Oh.
one just a couple of weeks ago that she was having trouble. Like she said, that it was like disaster after disaster after disaster. She's like, every time I get any money in hand, something breaks and my whole world goes crazy. And so we started looking at her house, and she's like, oh, and we've had this massive leak from like outside the back of the kitchen. And she was, and I was, and we started looking, and it's exactly in her box. It took up her entire wealth box. And I was like, well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you've got to fix this leak. And she was like, the water company had been like subsidizing her water bill for months because this leak just was ongoing and ongoing. And they were using like thousands of gallons of water a week. So anyhow, I mean, it was it was a big mess. So I mean, that's kind of it. Always to me, it's like the poison berry, where you come in and you find those issues are kind of are based along those same things. That when I kind
Yeah.
of get discouraged, or like you have self-doubt like about business or whatnot, it's always that back area where my office is. That's also because my office sits in my career area. It
Yeah.
and it becomes sort of a nightmare. So when I work with clients, the number one thing I want to take it is like, if you have issues where you have a massive leak and you're losing thousands of gallons of water a month, fix that before you
Hmm.
start trying to hire a feng shui practitioner, because that's going to be the first advice. Always the first advice
That's going to be the first thing they tell you.
is go around and fix whatever you can. If you have a light that won't stop flickering, those are usually indications of energetic problems.
Yeah.
And sometimes, well, I'll use this example. I drink a lot of water. So I had bought
Okay.
one of the pure snap-on things that goes on the kitchen faucet. And at first it worked really well. And then after a couple months, we kept having issues with like back pressure. And so you'd turn the water on, and if you turned it on too high, you'd get sprayed in the face with the back pressure from the faucet.
Oh, wow.
We took it apart and we thought, oh, it's the rubber thing in there that it got chewed up. So we replaced the rubber thing
Okay.
again, and it worked okay for a couple weeks. And then it got like way worse. And I was like, what in the? So I went all over town looking for like a solution to fix this. And then I was like, I'm just going to Google this. There's got to be other people that have had this problem. So I started
Yeah.
looking. It was a known issue with the pure filters on this particular type of sink faucet, and they sent me a free replacement overnight. I had been looking for months all over the place,
Yeah.
had spent God knows how much money, and they sent me a free replacement once I looked for it. So on occasion, sometimes you'll have these massive annoying issues, and the solution is actually fairly simple. So that's one thing I always suggest people look into if they can, is, if you have those, and I'll tell you this too, and it's not like a blatant self-promotion or anything, but on my website, under my email opt-in, there is a Feng Shui starter kit. And the first part of that kit is going through your house and actually taking a look at the issues within the house and then prioritizing them. That's where I always start with my clients, is to prioritize any real, like, solid issues they're having. And then we start to take a look at the energetic, and we take, and design and anything that's beyond, the structural issues that they need to change.
Yeah.
So,
Because, yeah, no matter how much energy you've got going on, if your foundation is falling apart or your roof is leaking,
right.
There's just,
Well, and that's
going to be there
the crazy
no matter
thing. Actually, I have a friend, I think you may know her as well, that she is currently in the process of trying to sell her house. They've been trying to sell their house and move for years. They finally gotten an offer on their house, and they found out that the foundation of their house that they had structurally fixed in like 2006 was not fixed correctly, and that basically now they have to have this house lifted again, and they have to have the foundation correctly fixed now over this major issue. And so it's been kind of she's had issues with this house and where they've been living and finances for years and years and years. And now all of a sudden, now that they've had this home inspection done, here's this massive issue that's been right underneath them the whole time. And they paid someone hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix this the first time. And obviously he's a scumbag, and he's not going to do anything. They don't want him to fix it again because he's not going to do it right. And so those are always, no matter how much energetic work you do, if you've got issues that are that detrimental to your home, it's I don't want to say it's as bad as having black mold in your house. In some situations, you have those detrimental areas where you open yourself up to having black mold, or your house literally away underneath. So, I mean, those things are always things I want to look at first. And sometimes I'll go into people's houses and I'll get a random complaint about like their electric bill being so high or their water bill being so high. And we start to actually look around, and very, very quickly we'll find the problem. It's simply haven't put their nose to the ground and started looking for it. So that's, like I said, Feng Shui works on a wide range of scales. But always making sure the house is structurally intact and safe is a number one priority.
To start. Oh, for sure. I am actually just keeping a quick eye on the time because I know we like to keep these around 30 minutes because I know you've got things to, and you disappeared right away. That was not not an indication to I got to unlock the seat so you can pop back in. So while you're doing that, that was, like I said, I'm still, my head is still spinning with the scale of how far and how broad and how wide reaching all this stuff is, and how many pieces and connections get pulled in to creating this space. And it shouldn't surprise me, but it's still, just to think about it, I kind of go, whoa, the big picture. But before we wrap up today, what I wanted to check in on is sort of flip this around a little bit entirely and just find out what is sort of one thing that is really a presence for you right now. What's something that you're looking at going, yeah, that's the next thing I'm going to connect to, whether that's in life or play or health or work. What's your next big connection or little connection?
Connection in what way?
What are you looking to connect to next? What's your next step? What's your next juicy piece that you're looking at?
Well, I mean, we're still having because David has only just moved in a couple months ago, we're still really working on integrating him into our household. And it's been a little bit more of a challenge with
Yeah.
him working third shift and me working during the day. Just kind of integrate schedules and everything. And as far as work stuff, the big thing that I've been working on is creating a resource on Feng Shui for healing. Everybody automatically turns to Feng Shui when they want to, increase their abundance. And so that's one thing I want to take a big look at is the healing aspect of Feng Shui. And it's working. The more I build it, the more I realize I'm using it in my home life, like every day. It's been very, very interesting on that level.
That sounds very cool. So if people want to find out, you referenced your website earlier. If people want to find you and find out more about what you're up to, where's the best spot to track you down?
The best place to start is EmpressEnergies.com. My last name is Cosminsky. It's a little difficult to spell, but if you start out at EmpressEnergies.com, there's links on there to finding me all over the internet. I am on Instagram and Pinterest and all those different places. And I also am, like I said, you can sign up for the starter kit if you want to take a look at that and, take a look at definitely prioritizing the issues within your home and trying to find those hot spots that I work on with my clients as well.
Awesome. Oh, it was so fun to have you here. I feel like I learned so much. I'm getting a lot out of these things. This was very cool. Thank you for hanging out. That was fun. Oh, yeah. And yes, so that's Erica. I always point the wrong way by the time the recording comes out. Whoever is on the other side of me over here is Erica Cosminsky. And holy crap, she knows a lot of stuff. So if, anything to do with energy and your space and your place and flow and apparently landscaping too, go check her out. I am Jen Danielson, jendanielson.com. And my whole world is all about connections, which is why I use the word connection a lot. And figuring out how all these things connect together and what that means for everybody. So thanks for hanging out again today.
No, I appreciate you.
And we'll be back in a couple of weeks or sooner. I've got a few balls up in the air right now, but thank you for hanging out, Erica. It was a blast.
Thank you.